Welcome to ClassMon EYLF, a tool that we've designed specifically for Australian early years educators. Now, ClassMon is a software program that has a lot of functions, but these functions are designed specifically for Australian early years educators who are using the early years learning framework. It's a class manager, a file manager, an observation recorder, an area to store your learning stories, a program to help you write your transition statements, and a program to help you with your planning, as well as many other things. So I'm going to show you some of the features now and give you an idea of how it works. ClassMon is basically a database, but it's a database that's built around the early years learning framework. So everything you do in ClassMon is related to the framework, and from the information you record, you can produce portfolios, reports, planning documents, all based on the framework. First up, I'll talk a little bit about the student data and the database. So you can see here when I've logged in, I have a class, and I could be managing multiple classes, but I have one class as my demo. If I click on a student, I've clicked on Adam here, it opens up an area where I can record observations for Adam, and the observations are recorded within the learning framework. Now, before we talk about observations, we'll just come here and look at the student data. Now, we collect some basic student data for each student. Because we hold this information in the database, and because we've spoken to so many kindergartens and childcare centres, we know there's certain things you want to do with that information that you may do in programs such as Word. So we've just added some extra little reports that we can produce, such as a simple headshot report, which will just print a page or multiple pages of the children's photo with their name underneath. Very quick, very easy. That saves you going out to Word. Another report is the name cards report. Just a simple way of generating name cards for all your students to stick on all their artwork. And finally, a data report. So you can just quickly generate a student data report. I've only got information in here for Adam, just with some basic information. Any of the reports produced in ClassMon can be printed to paper, or you can generate a PDF file. We'll now take a look at the observation feature in ClassMon. Now, this is really the only input that you put into ClassMon on an ongoing basis. You may record your observations as you do now on the playground with pen and paper, but when you come to put it in the computer, you choose your student, you choose the learning outcome that you want to make an observation for, and you just simply put your comment in. So you can write your comment directly in. You can access things like comment banks, so you can have your own set of comments that you may wish to use. And you can also use the guide information from the Early Years Learning Framework book. So this will assist you in writing your comments. So you write a basic comment. You can also choose related learning outcomes. You can add some work samples, and with your work samples you can add captions. And you can also add a learning story or a narrative. So once you've done that, you apply your observation and it's recorded into the database in the correct area. So you continue to do that for all your observations and add them for each student. You do not have to do each of these tabs. You may choose not to do a learning story or add work samples. You may just write comments, and those comments will assist you when you come to do your transition statements. But I'll show you the benefits of doing each of these tabs. The first one is that at any time you can pull reports on the progress of the student. So if I choose progress report, it very quickly pulls up a report for Adam which shows where Adam is at now based on the observations that you've made. I'll just point out that this is Latin. If you're trying to read the comments, there is a lot of Latin there. There's only one that I've added in English. It is just dummy information. So this is a quick overview of Adam, and you can see all your observations within the framework and all your comments. So that could be very handy for a progress report or maybe for a parent-teacher interview. The second type of report is an observation overview, and this is very handy for planning as it gives you an overview of all the observations you've been making, and it's color-coded so that if you haven't made an observation, or if you've only made one observation for a certain learning outcome, it will highlight it red, and it will go to green if you've made 3 or more observations for that outcome. You can also produce this report at a class level. So if you want a class overview, which will help with your class planning. You can see that I've only made these observations for Adam and the rest is blank. So as this starts to fill in, you'll be able to see your gaps, which will help you with your planning for certain learning outcomes. If you have added work samples and learning stories, you now have the opportunity to very quickly produce portfolio pages based on your learning stories. So you select Report, Learning Story. It will automatically compile every photo and learning story that you've added, and if we do a print preview, it puts each to a page, shows the outcomes that you've related to, that you've chosen for this learning story, and adds the captions. So you do not need to copy and paste or add any more information. It compiles that automatically. So as you can see, it's done 18 pages for Adam with one click, and that saves a lot of work. And again, you can print to paper or generate a PDF if you want to email or store that. The final report that I'd like to talk about is the transition statement. Now, what I show here is designed specifically for Victorian services, but could be just as handy for services in other states of Australia. For each student, there is a tab here called Transition. Now this gives you access to all the transition tabs, and these are basically the pages of the transition statement. A lot of these fields will pre-fill from the information from the database, so you don't need to fill that in. If you've filled in your service ID or your service name or your contact names, it will come in automatically. The main area you need to fill in are the learning outcomes. So if we click on the Learning Outcomes tab, that gives us access to each of the 5 learning outcomes. And this is where we write our comment, which will then populate the transition statement. Now we've provided some tools here to help you write your comments for your transition statement. The first one is a comment bank, and this gives you access to, again, comments that you've set up yourself. Now, what these comments are for, they are to form the basis of your final comment. We in no way suggest that you use the exact comments. We don't want them to be tick boxes, basically, but you would use these to help write your final comment, so you'd expand on that, that comment. The summary button gives you access to all the observation comments you have made. So by clicking summary, here we have, and again, excuse the Latin, but here we have access to any observation comments we've made for the outcome of identity, and from here we can just copy any that we might need and we can paste that into our final comment, or we might just use that as a point of reference to write our comment. So it's a good way of quickly looking back at what comments you've made throughout the year about Adam for his identity. And the final one is the guide text. So again, we have access to the Early Years Learning Framework to help guide us in our comments, and that comes directly from the Early Years Learning Framework guide. So from there you can again copy and paste or just use that as a reference. And once you're done, hit save, and then at any point you can produce your transition statements. So transition statement is exactly how you see it, how you have done them before, except that we have removed the color boxes at the top so you don't waste so much ink. So basically you have a transition statement which has all the information that you've recorded. At any time you can step back into the program, you can select a student, select an observation and make any changes. You can select your transition and edit any of the information and then reproduce your transition statements. You can also publish your transition statements to PDF. So just to summarize, the main features of ClassMon are that it is a class manager, a file manager, an observation recorder, a tool for creating learning stories, a tool to assist you writing transition statements, and a tool for planning. There are many other features that I haven't shown you here, but you will learn as you start to use ClassMon. What you need to remember is that even though this does so much, it is only doing it from the one set of observations. So you're only recording a small amount of information, and you're using that information in different ways. So it means less work, but more efficient use of that data that you do record. We hope you enjoy using ClassMon, and we know it will be a tool that will help save you time and allow you to spend more time with your children.